Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. We are going to have such a good conversation here. I know this because Jeremy Scrivens and I, a few weeks ago, got on the phone and we actually met through LinkedIn. Ronan Leonard introduced us. And I didn't really know why we were going to have this conversation. I just knew that we had to have this conversation for some reason. You know, that was one of those things like, hey, you need to meet and talk and it'll be good. And so we get on the phone, and I think we probably talked for 2 hours, and it was so good. And I have to tell you, I wished I was recording that conversation because I was just making notes like crazy, and I would have loved to share it. And so that's why I said to Jeremy, we've got to have you on the podcast and to be able to share what it is you're up to and some of the perspective that you have that I think can be very valuable right now. So Jeremy is an appreciative futurist and a collaboration and innovation catalyst. He is the director of the emotional economy at work, and he's from Australia. He is a global thought leader and a consultant on building collaboration in the digital world for innovation, social good, and the future of talent. He has been named, he's got lots of accomplishments, but I grabbed a few of them. He has been named as one of the top 50 future of work influencers, top 100 HR influencers, top 100 digital influencers, the top 10 tweeters on economic transformation by the UK Guardian, and one of the top business thinkers in Australia by Smart Company. So, you know, most people would be excited with just one of those accomplishments, and Jeremy has his reach has gone obviously way beyond just any one of those areas. And so, Jeremy, I'm just really excited to have you here on the Leaders of Transformation. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. There's a song that says, "Nothing I have is truly mine," and so I look at those accolades and I think that's nice. And so I think, okay, how can I use those now to do good in the world? You know,
exactly.
That's the important thing. Influence is a responsibility, and it's purely, you know, it just perhaps is a tracker that says maybe you are having some conversations that people care about. So I think that's the important thing. It's a milestone to say, yeah, maybe what we're talking about does matter. And in a world where there is, to be honest, a fair bit of darkness, you know, if we can bring salt and light to those conversations, then you know, for me that's the important thing.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed our conversation 2 weeks ago as well, and I think we talked for 2 hours, and I thought, where's that time gone?
Exactly. Oh, it was so good. And I have been talking to other people about the conversation that we had because I had taken so many notes, and I have quoted you so many times. So I'm really looking forward to this. So let's start talking. I mean, there's so much we could talk about here, and so I thought, where do we begin with the depth of conversation that I know we're going to get to? And I thought the best place to start is to talk about leadership. How has leadership changed?
So the context for me would be, I'm going to start off with the technology first, because most people start with the tech first these days, because it is having such an impact. And in a nutshell, what I've tried to do, or am trying to do in my thinking and my work, because my thinking comes from my work on the ground. I'm actually a practical person who gets my boots dirty and puts the hard hats on and and works with people, looks to work with people and leaders who want to try something different. And it's from those conversations and those kind of experiences that the ideas and the frameworks form. So here's one particular framework. So it was Charles Schwab, who's the chairman of the World Economic Forum, said a couple of years ago that the new technology, which is called 4IR, Fourth Industrial Revolution, or digital, or whatever, including all those things we hear about, like, you know, artificial intelligence and machine learning and so forth, Internet of Things, all these things are, he said, so significant that they require us to, as leaders, to be very clear about what we're going to use it for. The tech is neutral, but it's so significant in its impact that we can either use it for good or for bad. And by bad he meant We could use it to diminish humanity, diminish the things we care about, you know, family, love, compassion, giving, generosity. We can see people as cogs of the machine. Or we could use it to, his word is to augment humanity. And and as he was talking about this, I was also writing and thinking about what this meant. And it was, for me, I call those the two streams. So you know, there's an old, I think it was a Robert Frost poem about you come to two forks in the road, you know, and I think that's where leadership is now. You know, I think it's about each of us as leaders has a choice, and we will at some point come to a crossway, and we have a choice to make, and that choice will be fateful, because the first stream or first road is the use of the tech to continue to feed what I call the machine. So we've had a mechanistic view of work and design of organizations and jobs for 300 years, since the first industrial revolution started in the UK, where I originally come from, of course. And what we did there, we took people out of the homes, because I want to come back to that theme, because we're going back into the homes now. We took people out of the homes and out of the communities and the marketplaces, and put them into these big buildings called factories. And individuality was lost. The stories were lost. Before we knew it, the systems were in place and the stories were lost. And it became about feeding the machine. So the big engines, you know, the focus shifted from people to the machine, from the craft in work to the labor in the work. And all the tech was used in the conversation now around mass production, efficiency, speed, cost, quality, and so on. And we spent 300 years refining our business leaderships to have that conversation, right? And so automation, I remember reading the quality manual. I think it was Jansen who wrote I think his name was Jansen, 25 years ago, wrote this big fat quality manual where quality was all about quality. And he had in there in the foreword, he said, the purpose of quality movement is to take out the transactional work or automate it so that we can release people to do meaningful work. Now, that was a noble statement. That's what I saw. That's what I believed. That is a second stream view, but it's not first stream. First stream is where that does not matter, where automation takes place for the purposes of efficiency and profit, and where people are basically able to be jettisoned, right? That's first stream. And quite frankly, a lot of our leaders and managers have been taught that view of business. And the new tech is so powerful. So robotics, for example, replacing people. First tech assumes that to be a no-brainer, that that's okay, and has no sense of responsibility around what happens to people after that. It's basically, it's also first stream is based on a deficit way of thinking, which means that the philosophy is the world is a tough place, survival of the fittest. There's a bit of Darwinian evolution stuff here. It's a dog-eat-dog world. It's a war. It's the language of warfare. A strategy that's been built up in Harvard over the years. And when I was learning business strategy 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it was the language of warfare, you know, and domination, and how we're going to beat the competition. It's always about beating competition. I think our leadership now, in certainly some leadership I'm seeing in the United States, is deficit leadership. It's competitive, not collaborative. So that's first stream, and people don't matter. And certainly also, you know, and when these days we're seeing a lot of focus on things like inclusion and diversity, but they are hitting a first stream mentality, right? Because first stream doesn't care about inclusion or diversity because it distracts you. Why would you care about individuals when that distracts you? It wastes time, doesn't it? It wastes time spending. We don't want to spend time finding out who Nicole is, because that's a waste of time. There's no profit in it, or it maybe, or isn't there? So that's first. Second stream now has a different view. The second stream says, I am in work and business to make the world a better place, to contribute, to make people happy, to see something good happening in the world. And so the tech there is given into the hands of people who say, how can we use the tech for good? And secondly, first stream puts the design of everything in the hands of a few. where second stream puts the hands, and so you have leaders as, so here's the art coming back to leadership. First stream is the leader as expert. The leader as expert. I'm the one with the vision. I'm the one with the strategy. I'll surround myself with some executives and some special advisors inside and out, and we will make all the decisions. And everything else is then top down, right? So our organizations now are siloed and they are structured around minor control. And they are limited by the vision of only a few people. The data and the tech is owned by the company. But here's what's really happening now. This is what's really exciting. And this is the opportunity now for leadership. So at the heart of the new tech is the idea of convergence. Convergence means shifting from the parts of things to the wholeness of things. So the parts of things meant, so 25, 30 years ago, when I started work 40 years ago, technology started to come into play, but it was actually each piece of technology, each piece of software was designed for a specific solution, right? Finance software, HR software. And of course, as you know, when I know and others know, have been around a bit longer, but the data didn't talk to each other. Systems didn't talk. So then the IT guys spent 20 years doing what's called systems integration, right? Trying to make things dock with each other. What Convergence does, it doesn't do that. It takes a blank piece of paper and says, what is the whole data that we need at once? Just give a full perspective. And as the IT people have been working on that, what they came to was a fundamental conclusion, in my experience, in my opinion. They concluded, where do you wrap the data around? The organization or the individual? And they came to the conclusion that we wrap it around the individual. It's one of the biggest secrets that's yet to be told or unpacked yet in its potential, because the first streamers don't want people to know that. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, don't get me wrong, but the first streamers don't want to hear that because they want to keep control of their information. Second stream though says, wow, individual. So for example, my phone here, this is a mobile phone. Obviously, this is a converged piece of kit. Why? It's got my work data on it. I can use it for my work, all the apps on there. It's my life data. I can take it away from work, and all my life data, the stuff that I want to care about, all my social connections, all the other stuff I want to put on there is on there as well. This is converged. It does not disintegrate when I move around. Now, our phones are converged, and the phone is in the hands of the individual now, but our organizations are not converged. Our jobs are not converged. And so what the new role of leadership is going to do now, in a nutshell, so the new leaders who are emerging now, they get this. They see that the future is the design of work, starting not with the organization, but with the individual. And so a leader will shift from being leader as expert to a leader as host of a growing collaboration of individuals coming together around deep conversations around things that matter, and to reform and to reshape work around a collaboration of strengths to a shared purpose. And right now, as COVID has hit us, which is a crisis, we're seeing some of those host leaders starting to emerge and taking the time out to have those kind of reflective conversations. So that in a nutshell perhaps is the difference for me. The tech, I try and understand where the tech's going, and then try and work with organizations and leaders to unpack where the tech is, and then say, come on, you know what, you don't have to be a passive waiter for the tech to bite you. You can now work with your people, because together, as a community of people, your workforce, your customers, as an ecosystem, you've got the answer. The answer lies within your own conversation if you just have the courage to act as a host, not as an expert.
Well, and you talk about the social rooms and summit rooms, and maybe talk about how you actually engage and create these environments for these conversations. Yeah, can you talk about that?
So a key word
and maybe
here,
even start where it started, because I know you had that, you
yeah,
shared that catalyst story that is where you discovered this.
it was at that was the
With the mushrooms.
the mushroom farm.
Yeah.
Yes. So key word here is at scale. So what the tech does, everything's at scale. It's bringing things together at scale. You and I are connecting at scale now. We're thousands of miles apart. But a piece of tech called LinkedIn or whatever, connected me into Ronan, who then connected me into you. And so we're now forming collaborations at scale. And it's going out to a whole bunch of people. If we go back to first stream and second streams, at the heart of first stream management is the view of organizations as problems to be solved. The language has been problems. The language of business has been, we are a problem. Now, you don't talk to your kids and say, I've got two problems. One is named Sarah and one is named Jeremy. We don't think of kids like that, for heaven's sake. And
hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Well, sometimes there's some challenges, but you know what I'm trying to say. But organisations will be taught to treat organisations of people as problems. And so what happens is that when we see problems, we look at the language of diagnostics and fixing things, and you know, the whole Lean Six Sigma stuff in the 90s was all about solving problems and looking for bad stuff and fixing bad stuff, finding the causes of what doesn't work. Concept of flow, which is the idea of in the textbooks, is the absence of waste. But my goodness, flow is a much bigger idea than the absence of waste. It's the heart and the head and the hands in unison and in an orchestra with others to create something good. That's a very different concept. So, problem solving. What's the alternative? So a guy called David Cooperrider, Professor David Cooperrider, 25 years ago or so, began to think of a different conversation around the idea of moving from continuous improvement around problem solving into innovation. So he was one of the first to use this word innovation, and he began to realize that true innovation was a conversation around strengths, not weaknesses. For example, you learn nothing about flow from studying waste, actually. You learn about flow from studying flow. And then you look to say, how can we extend it? So he began the appreciative inquiry conversations in syllabus, which I've been deploying now for about a dozen years or so. And appreciative inquiry is the idea of bringing things back to the whole. Now, this is where the connection was with the convergence in the tech, because I began to experiment with this. And the idea is that in the wholeness of things, everyone's story matters. Everyone has a part to play. The principle of social constructionism, that no two people see the world the same way. For a first stream leader, that is a dangerous thing, because you don't want people to see the world a different way. You want people to see the world as you see it. And because you can get them to conform, you lose creativity, innovation, because you're only seeing one part of what's actually happening. The appreciative inquiry says, let's get people back together. Let's engage them in a growth topic, not a problem-solving topic. And let us then engage them in discovering the best or the positive core of something against topic, understand it, what it is, why do we do it, what is it that's our exceptional best, why is it our exceptional best, and then let's imagine a new future where our best becomes the normal experience. That's appreciative inquiry, and that was the summit room. And you know, the mushroom farm story, I don't know whether you'd like to hear about that now, but
sure.
I mean, I began to become across the appreciative inquiry, and it was a struggle for me for about 2 years, because I was steeped in the problem solving approach. And I'll tell you why I was steeped in it, because deep down I was taught as a leader, and then as an advisor, I left Telstra as a manager about 20 years ago, and I began my consulting practice. And as a consultant, you're supposed to have the expert answers, aren't you?
Yeah.
So consult means you consult with people to get their information, but you go away and distill that and come up with your own expert answer. That's consultation. That is not co-creativity.
Right.
Co-creativity is where you sit down with someone and say, what do you want to talk about? What do you care about? Who are you? What's our shared topic? And then let's create the future together, not take that away and you create it. So I was now looking at appreciative inquiry and saying, where can I deploy this? And so I got connected into Alan, who was the CEO of a mushroom farm in South Australia, and like 60, 70 people in the workforce, very different from my big Telstra telecom experience where 100,000 people and so on. you know, corporate executive, HR role, all that sort of good stuff. But here was I with a mushroom farm, and Alan I'd heard about it. I'd done some work for his cousin in a market garden. We'd installed Appreciative inquiry and seen an amazing outcome. It was amazing, really, really fantastic. And his cousin said, "I want what he's got." So we had breakfast. And I said, "Okay." So he said, "What's involved?" I said, "Well, we want to switch the conversation from a problem." And his conversation was all about problems, cost, you know, and how more efficiency and stuff like that. But his heart was big, and he loved his mushrooms and he loved his people, but he wasn't engaging them, right? So I persuaded him to get 60, 70 people in the room on a Saturday morning, which we did in a mushroom growing room, and I was due on the Monday morning to have a chat with him around what the topic would be, because we hadn't quite got there yet. And just as I was about to call, he called me, and he was very agitated and upset. And he had an Italian background, so he was quite excitable. and he said, "Oh, Jeremy, it's so great. We've got this thing coming up on Saturday. It's just in time." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because the supermarkets have slashed my mushrooms from $28 a kilo to $16 a kilo overnight. They're in a price war." They do that in Australia. You know, the supermarkets just will engage in price wars, and they will play one grower off against another, you know, and there's not really a community. It's a first stream view of business, right? And so he said, this is what he said: I'm sick to death. I'm worried, but thank God we're getting all our 60 people in the room on Saturday morning. Jeremy, you said to get all their ideas. That's great. Let's get all their ideas about how to take out more cost. That's a first stream conversation. And I just went quiet for a second. I said, "Alan, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Look, just please humour me for a couple of minutes, all right? And I will go back to your costing." I said, "You love your mushrooms, don't you? You see, in a Appreciative inquiry, you switch the conversation from fear to love, from what doesn't work to what works. You don't look at the darkness, you look at that one light that's glowing in the darkness, and you get near to it, and you have a conversation to extend it." That's Appreciative inquiry, because it's at the heart of that is the idea of seeing people and organizations as living human systems, not as static machines, not as the factory, not as the drying room itself, but the people in that room connecting their life force with other mushrooms. I know the old saying, you know, were they working in the dark? Okay, I get that. But so I said to him, "You love your mushrooms. You make some of the best mushrooms in Australia, don't you?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Tell me, what's been in your reflective time, or when you've had a crazy moment, what's been the one time you thought you might do something amazing with your mushrooms, something good, not just a profit, which is brilliant, but made a difference?" And he thought, it took a while for me to get him to switch from one part of his brain to the other. But he said, "My wife and I have been concerned for some time about obesity levels of kids in Australia. Yeah, and we see kids getting bigger, and they're eating the wrong stuff. We wish they could eat good food. And we had a dream. What if we get into the schools? What if we somehow get the kids being taught how to use mushrooms, you know, to grow mushrooms even, maybe even reach their parents?" Then he said, "Of course, commercially would be good too, because we might get a new market." I said, "That's great. There's no problem with that. But it's cause-based." And I said to him, "Why not give that a go?" And so it took a while, but he got up on Saturday morning. I never forget this. He got up, not an educated guy educated in terms of life, yeah, but hadn't been to university, never spoken in front of people before. He was nervous. First thing he says, "Jeremy's told me not to talk about cost." I said, "Go, keep going." He said, "Look, we got to." I said, "Share them with what's happening." So share what's happening. He shared the truth. We've got a challenge right now with supermarkets are being unfair. But he said, "You know what? I reckon there's an opportunity to change the conversation, to change." And he said, "I've got this idea." He talked about his passion for kids, and as he talked about his passion for a healthy Australian, for healthy Australian children, everyone in the room began to sit up, because you know what? It's a shared cause. You've either got a child yourself, or you've got a nephew, or you know someone, and so it's sharing this. And he said, I don't know how to do this. And at the moment, I'm in a leadership conversation, and an extraordinary leadership conversation on COVID, around what the future of leadership looks like. So we've put in place hashtag we don't know, and hashtag we're holding the space, right? Because it's honoring the fact we don't know. We want to engage in the conversation. But anyway, so what he was doing, he was holding the space, and he said, would you create this with us, with me today? Now in that room were four young African men who were Somali refugees, who were hired for their hands, and they were in the room as equal players. And there were four young Thai women who were going to university and just picking their spare time, and they're told to switch off their iPhones and put them to one side and not use it, because you don't go on social media during the day. You're here to pick at 60 mushrooms per second or whatever it was. And but they were in the room as well. So they got into their groups. They spent all day on the 4D conversation, discover, dream, design the future. And one of the questions as we set them was, it's 3 years now, the story of the mushroom farmers going viral around the world. Something extraordinary has happened. What is that story? What's happening? What's being transformed? What's different? What's new? Why is it so compelling? And so each of them shared their stories. And then they got into their table groups. They came back and they shared what the design would look like for this, as a high-level design, almost like a design blueprint or brief, if you like. And the last one to come up was a group of six of them. There were 2 of the Thai girls, 2 of the African labourers, financial director, scientific officer, all coming together. Now this was an equalised group. They weren't there on job titles. They were there and they were in a huddle together, and they all got up together and got up to the front and they presented. Scientific officer go first. It's 3 years from now, and we've created and installed the world's first coloured mushroom growing kits for kids. And we're in the schools, and the kids love them, and they're using it. And someone yelled out, "Is that possible?" And he goes, "I've always wanted to do it." And then one of the African labourers, Somali guys, puts up his hand and says, I can't do the accent right, but he goes, and we are collaborating with Mastermind Chef, who has created menus, and we're in the schools with the chef, and the kids are cooking their own mushrooms. We are helping them to show them how to grow the mushrooms, and the chef is showing them how to cook the mushrooms, right? And then one of the young Thai women, who was normally very quiet, doesn't say anything, races out the room, goes into a locker, brings her phone into the room, which was taboo, puts up her phone and says, we have mobile app, and we have social community, and we are engaging a community who are sharing their stories. And that to me is how the social room idea grew for me then. But what I saw also there was the fact the story comes before digital, but these young kids got digital because she is a digital native. She's got the analytics, and she put this up like this, and there was a cheer. And then the financial director finished off by saying, and we have bypassed the supermarkets. We've created our own new market, and they become irrelevant. So what became a problem turned into a whole new blue ocean space, because it connected, and there was a great big cheer in the room. Something shifted that day, and something shifted for me as well, as I saw a second stream leader, or I saw a leader go from a first stream mindset as expert, right, to a second stream leader as hosting of a conversation around a dream for good.
Wow. Well, and what I also got from that is that if you look at the problem, I forget who it was, Albert Schweitzer, I think, who said, the problems that you have that you're trying to solve, you can't solve them at the same level of thinking you were at when you created the problem in the first place. And so when you look at the problem costing and you're looking at how to solve the problem, you're almost like you're too close to it. You're at the same level in which you created the problem in the first place. And so you can't see it until, like what you're talking about, is you step out of it, look at it from a different point of view, bring the story in, bring that passion in. And then from there, it actually, you make the problem obsolete in the process of that.
And you've tipped into another aspect of the new leadership now, which is what I call bringing the non-usual suspects into the room.
Yes.
And the social room, which I got the idea of the social room from the Mushroom Farm story, because I thought, because when this beautiful young woman did this with her phone and said we've got social community, afterwards my son had come over and helped and filmed that particular day. My 20-year-old son, and we were sitting in the hotel afterwards. He said, "Dad, you've got to go on Twitter. You've got to share the story on LinkedIn." And I wasn't on either of them, honestly. I mean, I was on LinkedIn as you do, but I wasn't using it to share stories or write content or whatever. I wasn't on Twitter. And he said very profoundly, there's a whole community out there to tap into. So I began to write on LinkedIn and began to talk on Twitter and whatever, and started to see all these new opening, connected with all sorts of beautiful people like yourself, and started to do collaborations. Nearly every collaboration I've had in the last 4 years has come because of a conversation on Twitter or LinkedIn. Nearly every single one, or even Facebook, or even a Periscope app where I'm filming kangaroos, which I do as a hobby. You know, I'm doing a set of kangaroo videos now every second day because we've got kangaroos all over our house, all over our garden, I should say, and 1,000 of them. And so I'm doing a series on training the kangaroos to socially distance. And it just got 1 million likes or something. It's really daft. Just such a bit of fun. But even there, people are coming back and saying, "Hey, you're that guy that talks about this. Can we have a conversation?" You know. So this is how it works. So what I saw with social was, I saw the young kids also on their phones, who are collaborating with people and having conversations all around the world. Yet when they come into the organizations, they've got to switch it off, right? And it sits going in the firewall. And corporate then takes over the social media conversation. You will control it. We're going to do the tweets. We're going to do the LinkedIn stuff. And what happens is it shuts down as back to a single enterprise, was what these kids were part of a global ecosystem. Yeah. So the social room is a syllabus that I put together about 3 years ago after being requested by Sasha Romanovich, from CEO from Grant Thornton in the UK, to come over to the UK and help design and run a summit room experience in Manchester, city of Manchester, for the city of Manchester around the future of health. And at the same time, she said, could you start up a social room that takes on my young interns and coach them how to be social natives and start up a conversation at more depth in Manchester. So I created a syllabus for that, and then came back to England 6 months later and did the same thing with the city of Birmingham. And the young kids, the young talent, began to be trained in how to be social natives, to get engaged in the community with others around looking after homelessness, domestic violence, suicide prevention, the things these young kids care about. And these enterprising leaders like Sasha and Trevor Haynes from Pacifico in Birmingham saw that the future of talent and the future of work engages the heart and connects it into community. Because Trevor said to me, it was the construction and design division of Birmingham City Council. Trevor's a social native. He's a second stream leader. He is on Twitter. He's been rated as one of the top local government CEOs in the UK. Just retired now for a number of years. Yet he still had time to retweet 130,000 times personally on Twitter. Can you believe that?
Wow.
And I said to him, I don't believe you, mate. This is fake news. You're making it up. You've got someone who's doing it behind you, paying someone to work 26 hours a day to keep pumping. I said, no, I don't. I do it myself. He's what we call a curator. He's a beautiful curator. And he's helped people to and so he's a beautiful curator. But he said, we build buildings and we maintain buildings, but we want to know who the people are inside them. And I want the young talent coming through to care about people inside them. And that's what I want the social room to do. And then the same with Ultimate Software 8 months ago in Miami, with a group of beautiful people now who are hosting a global conversation around what convergence looks like now in the future of work, triggered by COVID. and these are young kids in there as well as some others, and they've now connected with 700 leaders around the world in an equity at work social LinkedIn group called Equity at Work. Encourage people to check it out. These are the social rooms. And then from these social rooms, and they engage. And so the social room starts with this question. You could, and every person, so a host team comes together, 6 or 8 people, 10 people, for a week, and it starts with this question. Not what is the corporate vision for the company. Not what is the corporate social responsibility project that we've dreamed up. As good as that is, don't get me wrong. It starts with taking every individual, and like Gabby, young intern Gabby at Ultimate Software 6 months ago. Gabby, I want to ask you a question. You could change something for the better in your world by collaborating at scale with others who believe what you believe through social media. What would be the story? So when and with whom are you collaborating? And what's your personal hashtag and what's your shared hashtag? And so Ultimate Software, who are rated by Forbes as the best place in America to work for in tech, the best place to work for, top 5 place to work for, if include for women, are investing their time now in experimenting with the social room where their people can be engaged from the heart and engaged in a much more global conversation around seeing workers are connected and seeing talent as a connected ecosystem. That's what a second stream company does. And in the Appreciative inquiry, conversations are rooted right through the social room. It's the same principle. Collaboration at scale is bringing more strengths and stories into play and hosting those conversations in ways that don't control it, but release it and allow an abundance to emerge around things that really matter to people.
This is so good. I could listen to you all day. This idea of the social rooms, and I know you were talking about when we talked a few weeks ago about even like CEOs getting on and telling their story, and like you said, hashtagging it, their personal hashtag, collective hashtag, collaboration at scale, all of this. I mean, it's kind of like, it's almost like so obvious, but yet it's profound because that's not what has been taught. Most of what has been taught is that first stream. What are you noticing in the midst of COVID? And I know that, we have more people home, virtually working at home than we've ever had before, more people connecting virtually than ever before. How are you seeing that accelerate this or open up greater possibility? And even just having maybe even just while you're sharing about that, is to shift people's perspective, because I know there's a lot of people who are kind of like waiting for it to go back to normal, and it's never going to go back to normal. We're going to create a new normal, and it's kind of like a catchphrase nowadays, right? The new normal. But in reality, it has changed. The world has changed, and it has changed for good, permanently.
Okay, I'll give you very practical examples in a minute. But here's something I heard a joke with the other day. So I'm a student of history. And I one of the things I studied when I was much younger was the French Revolution. And we are actually, and I say that because this is actually in the cusp of a revolution. And so in the French Revolution, in the 18th century, you had years of autocratic rule by the kings, right? So the aristocracy, the 1% or less than 1%, dominated the 99%. Very feudal, very much controlling. You had what we call the bourgeoisie, the middle classes, the rising middle classes, and they were the traders and so on. You had the peasants. There were four estates. The peasants were the labourers and so on. But there was another class. What happened was one of the ministers of Louis XIV for about 15, 20 years did some very interesting, very positive, good work in encouraging some of the peasants to take ownership of and give them more ownership, and encouraging the aristocrats to give the peasants more ownership and give them plots of land and stuff like that, which they could own themselves. And then that was one day taken away from them. And when the French Revolution occurred and everyone and people rose up, it wasn't the peasants that rose up. It was this other class, the peasants that had some more. They were called the sans-culottes. And the sons got lots. So the ones that rose up were the ones who had seen something and tasted something, and when it was taken away, they rose up. Now, what I think we're seeing now, is a new breed of sans culotte who,
yes.
Who have been imprisoned, and I'm exaggerating to make the point, right?
Yep.
So we have had a building. This is the factory model of work. Look at the term remote work. How many times have we heard? We'd be multimillionaires if you like, we'd be able to put a dollar for every time we've heard this term remote working in the last few weeks, right? Now, I was asked to write an article on remote working, and I said, what do you mean by remote work? There's nothing remote about the way we're working now. It's brilliant. And I said, what remote from what? Remote from the building, remote from the factory, remote from the engine room. That's the model. Remote working is the word that comes out of a first stream leadership model that says they are remote from us, right? Yeah. But what's happened is people are going back into their homes. And yes, there's some struggles, and yes, there's some challenges. Of course there are. But also people are starting to experience a different kind of lifestyle. And quite a few of them, not everyone, but quite a few of them are rediscovering a different conversation. They're discovering their kids, for example. They're discovering teaching. I mean, teaching kids is not easy, but they're starting to see a different perspective, and they're getting more involved, intimate with their kids. They know more about what their kids are doing. They're discovering, and you're also seeing an equalizer now. So one person said to me, I was having a conversation with a young woman the other day who we could probably, let's call her a little bit introverted, which is, I don't like that word, or shy. But she said to me, and we were on a Zoom call. Actually, we were on a Zoom call, which I was facilitating a group conversation with a company. And her manager, her boss, was in the room. Now, in the Zoom room, and the boss wasn't wearing the suit, wearing a T-shirt, and the boss looked a little bit unkempt and hadn't shaved, and there was a dog and a cat running all over him, and he was trying to hold two kids and stuff. And she burst out laughing. And she opened up, and what happened was it opened up a different conversation, and he burst out laughing too. And they started to discover each other. The experience of work meant there was an equalizer occurring. That makes sense? I'm no less important than you are. We're in this together. So what's going to happen is that if some of the leaders and managers go, okay, let's go back to the old regime. I'm the boss. Right, come back into the boardroom. I'll sit at the front of the table. You sit over there, mate. Some will comply and some will do, hang on, mate. No, not anymore. And I'm not going to do it. There's a different way. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a revolution in terms of, at least here in the US, in terms of control and some certain things, like even government control, there's that. But what you're talking about is a revolution at work, and
yes.
It's going to be, it's like, if you let the cat out of the bag, it's hard to get the cat back in the bag.
And you think about that,
and that's a good thing. It's a good thing. Yeah.
Not if you're first stream, it's not.
Yeah. But you talked about earlier though about like profit. Maybe it's not so profitable, or maybe it is it. That's the question, right? It's like, that's where First Strength says it's not as profitable to be concerned about who the individual people are, right? But in reality, is that true?
In reality, there's more profit in second stream.
Yes.
Far more profit, because you open up into. So let's wear a technical HR hat for a second. Let's talk about engagement. I mean, do we know that engagement, employee engagement? Again, employee is a first stream term. Anyway, and by the way, employee comes from this whole concept that I was taught from day one in HR, way back in 1978, as a graduate intern in HR. That the person doesn't matter, the job does. So I was taught what's the fundamental tool of human resource management? The job description. and the job. So work is defined as chunks of tasks in a job, and a group of jobs is called a team, and clusters of that are called divisions, and so on. So it's an organization, a military organization around a structure. So work is defined as a job, and we then bolt a part of Nicole onto the job, but not the whole of Nicole. And we limit the incredible creativity and diversity of strengths and imagination. And because we say this is your job and not someone else's, we limit the questions you can ask about areas that you're told not to be part of. And that's what I mean by the non-usual suspects. The non-usual suspects have a redefined idea of what work is. Work is a collaboration of strengths put to work. And that's why it starts with individual. Hashtag me, we. Now, that's what we saw at the mushroom farm, wasn't it? We saw they were working on that Saturday morning. They weren't offline at a conference. They were creating the future together as a collaboration of strengths, and the creativity and the diversity and the profit that came from that. Because they went from, to use again, classic business strategy. They went from a red ocean experience, with sharks everywhere, trying to see business as being one-dimensional, the cost of the mushroom in a competitive war, to where they actually created a community where the cost wasn't important as much as the experience. And so there's no question. The profit is in the second stream. The question, and I think that's important, because I just figure that it's great that the second streams need to make the profit so they can do good things with it. And that means that they so let me just quickly, Ultimate Software, who are a company I admire a great deal. Their social room is up through the Equity at Work social room at LinkedIn. That's going to expand. Something incredible is happening there right now. I mean, they've got a young kid there. I say young kid, I shouldn't say that. They've got young people there who are in conversations with Under-Secretary Generals of the United Nations who are also in that social room LinkedIn group with them. Can you believe that? Around what the future looks like and so forth. But what the social room does, it connects people and it brings people together. And in the case of the business development manager in the Birmingham example, who was out there on Twitter sharing what she was doing with homelessness, connected with other young professionals in other organizations. One of them was an airline that was based in London, and they just moved to Birmingham. And a young executive there was sitting down with Rav, and they were doing a course together. And he said, "Do you guys, you actually build stuff, don't you? Build buildings and stuff. Can you do this type of building?" And she goes, "Oh, I think we can." He said, "Would you like to do it for us?" And she said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, if it's good enough for us to do a course together, it's good enough for us to do business together." So what you had there was a new way of doing work, a work built on trust between people, and where everyone becomes a salesperson. Now, there's nothing more commercially powerful than that.
Wow. Jeremy, this is so good. So good. Oh my goodness. I think that would be a great place to end, and to point people to your Twitter and LinkedIn. And I actually appreciate it, because you don't have a website. When I asked you, so what's your website? And you said, I don't have a website, because you're creating social rooms, and social rooms are occurring on, for you, it's Twitter and LinkedIn. And I think you said you had like 96 articles published on LinkedIn. So you're very active on LinkedIn. I looked you up on Twitter. You got like 150,000 followers, and just really into the conversation there. And so I would encourage, we're going to have that in the show notes on leadersoftransformation.com. We're going to have those links there for everyone. If you're looking for, so you can just type in Jeremy. There's a few Jeremys that I've interviewed, but if you type in Jeremy, this interview will come up and you'll be able to access that. And follow Jeremy on Twitter, follow him on LinkedIn, get in the conversation. And we may just have to have Jeremy back, because I'm very interested in this topic. And there have been some other people that I've had recently on the Leaders of Transformation, Norman Wolf, some other people that have been on talking about this. Andrew Hewitt has been talking about some things. So this conversation is Jeffrey Spahn talking about leadership and how leadership is changing and so forth. So this is a conversation that's going on. And I find it fascinating that there are Americans, that there are people from the UK, from Europe, from all over the world, Australia, that are talking about this and connecting. And that's actually a testament even to the social room. And so we can create those environments. And the Leaders of Transformation, when I first started to do this podcast and realize that it was not just about creating listeners, but that it was actually about creating a community around the podcast. Most podcasters, they'll have guests on their show and they're like, then awesome, that was really fun, let's stay in touch. But it's really a one-to-one stay in touch, maybe not, And what I realized, I'm like, wow, I'm having so many amazing guests on my show. What if I was to create a community of the people that were on my show and that were listening to the show, that were leaders of transformation on different levels? And so we've been, starting to do that. And so I think we'll have to have Jeremy back and explore this topic further and how we can expand that out and really make a huge impact in the world. So, so you can stay tuned, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be a part 2 to this. And but in the meantime, Jeremy, thank you. I so appreciate you being here today.
It's a pleasure's all mine. And stay safe, stay well, and stay hosting.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really good point. Before we finish up, I'll share that, because last time we talked, Jeremy pointed something out to me that has stuck in my mind ever since, is podcasting. For those of you that are considering getting into podcasting, or maybe whether it be as a guest or whether it be as a host, the podcasting space is exploding quite dramatically. And one of the things that I loved what you shared last time, Jeremy, is that it is actually this idea of hosting. We're actually hosting conversations. The podcast host is like this new leader, right? Which is actually not the leader of the expert having to know everything. I'm not coming in and saying, I need to know everything about this topic, but I'm hosting conversations. And so if you're a podcaster listening, or you're considering getting that, you might want to consider and looking at it through that lens of that you're actually not the one that has to have all the information. You don't have to have all the answers. But if you can create a social room, if you can even create an environment where you can have conversations with people, it's very, very powerful. And that's been my experience. And I talked about we were talking about the fact that my network has exploded as a result of doing this. I knew a lot of people before, great people, but I wasn't staying in touch with them always regularly. And there just really wasn't a reason. We weren't working on anything together. But through podcasting, we started to reconnect, and then they referred me to people, and they referred me to people. And here we're having this conversation, and we've had so many incredible conversations. So I would encourage you to explore the podcasting space. And I've got some people right now that are launching their podcast right now. I've got a course that I just put up there to see if anybody was interested in doing it. And I've got 25 people that are launching a new podcast, and it's exciting. And then I've got a tech platform, which we're developing, that is in the space of podcasting. And so we want to bring Jeremy and his expertise into that space as well, so that we can make it not just be a broadcast platform, but that it be a conversation and create opportunities for bringing, like Jeremy has said, the unexpected, the non-expert voice into the conversation. So yeah, it's really good. So stay tuned, follow us on social, so that you can stay up to date on what's going on. You can find us on leadersoftransformation.com. Again, we'll make sure that links so that you can follow Jeremy on Twitter and LinkedIn are going to be in the show notes. And we just love to hear what you're doing. We love to hear how you're making an impact in the world. We love sharing stories on social about people that are doing some amazing things in the world. And so reach out to us and let us know. And if you have any questions, we're happy to answer those questions as well. So until next time, have a great day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Leaders of Transformation real soon.